Hey you guys, it's the VC Andrews Critiquer. Let me ask you all a question. Do you remember when Disney remakes were good?
Yeah, I know that all Disney remakes today fall into one of three categories: somewhat decent at best, creative but misguided in the middle, and a completely pointless waste of time at worst. But then we have the Disney remakes from the 90s and the early 2000s. Sure, they weren't the powerhouse they were in the new 10s, but they were profitable enough for Disney to produce them randomly, and back then they seemed to put a lot more effort into writing them. Their remakes of The Incredible Journey, 101 Dalmatians, and Flubber are by no means revolutionary films, but people do seem to remember these remakes a lot more fondly than what Disney's been remaking today. But there was one Disney remake starring Lindsay Lohan that fans consider not only just as good as the original, but maybe even better. No, the other one. Yep, the 1998 remake of The Parent Trap. I'm sure a lot of you already know these movies like the back of your hand, but I'd look lazy if I didn't summarize them. Two girls go to probably the most unsupervised summer camp in existence and find they look just alike. They pettily decide they don't like each other and a prank war breaks out between the two. But this eventually gets out of hand, so the head of the camp decides the two girls need to learn to get along with each other. So she dumps them in the isolation cabin, again with absolutely no counselors to watch them even at night, so they can spend time together and connect. And this works as the girls eventually figure out that they're actually twins who were separated at birth when their parents divorced, each one taking full custody of one girl so they'd never have to have contact with each other again. So, wanting to meet the parent each one never knew for the first time, the girls decide to switch places and eventually try to patch things up with their parents. And both girls are crazy about each parent. The only problem is that their pop has his eyes on a young blonde who has his eyes on his money, slightly complicating their parent trap. I grew up with these movies as a kid and have very fond memories of them both, and I agree that the 1998 film is one of the best Disney remakes out there. But is it really better than the original overall? Well, what do you say we find out? This is old versus new, The Parent Trap.
So to make 'em dig, first you gotta rig. What do you gotta rig?
The Parent Trap. Take my heart and please don't break it, love. It was made for me and you.
The best folks for helping two people reconcile is always another two people. The question is, which two of the two pairs? Which one was able to charm their parents and the audience more? Well, let's find out with Best Twins.
I never really understood why they had one girl play both twins instead of just casting real twins. I mean, sure, the split screens look great in both versions, and whenever they use a double, they hide it pretty well. But wouldn't using actual twins have been a little, easier? But that's irrelevant, so let's just examine both pairs of twins. In the original, we have Sharon and Susan, played by a young Hayley Mills, and in the remake, we have Annie and Hallie, played by a young and pre-psychotic Lindsay Lohan. Both actresses do well at playing each twin's distinct personality, with Sharon and Annie being the proper British girly girl, and Susan and Hallie being the laid-back American tomboy. But since I am comparing them, I think I have to go with Hallie and Annie in the remake. First of all, let's listen to British Hayley Mills try to do an American accent.
I don't have a mother, just Dad and me. He's wonderful.
Now let's listen to American Lindsay Lohan try to do a British accent.
Or I have class and you don't. Take your pick.
No contest, but more importantly, Hallie and Annie just have a bit more charm to them. Young Lindsay Lohan just had this awesome 11-year-old girl spunk to her that allowed for some great line delivery, even for the lines that weren't especially funny. Like, look at this scene.
That girl is without a doubt the lowest, most awful creature that ever walked the planet. Thank you very much.
See what I mean? That's no streak in comedy writing, but the way Lohan delivers it is just so smile-inducing. But for the most part, the writers really did give Lohan some witty material to work with. Like, compare the scenes where the dad tells his daughter, pretending to be his other daughter, that he's getting married. In the original, she just throws a fit about it, but in the remake, she throws a fit in French.
Mais toutes les gens j'espère. Mais on dit c'est pas toi. Mais c'est pas possible, Jérôme.
Calm down.
That's just nuts. Even when they're bullying each other at the beginning, Lohan just has this badass pluck to her that's a ton of fun to watch. Susan and Sharon are not quite as appealing. When they get angry or mean, they're just angry or mean, and not the amusing sort of way. Plus, I don't even know why these two originally hated each other. In the remake, their feud started because Annie accidentally knocked Hallie into the water while they were fencing. Petty, but at least it's some reason. Here, Susan decides she doesn't like Sharon because... Now don't get me wrong, they definitely have some charm to them. Hayley Mills brings her own sort of pluck to the twins that made me smile a few times, especially when they sing that Sherman Brothers love song as part of their Parent Trap.
And though we haven't got a lot, we could be sharing all we've got.
And I also really enjoyed the scene where Sharon owns Vicky, but Mills' spunk just didn't quite charm me the same way Lohan's did. I'm not quite sure why. Maybe Lohan just felt a little more distinct, for lack of a better word, but either way, it made Holly and Annie more endearing and easy to root for. Point goes to the new.
It's absolutely revolting.
Revolting.
It's the most revolting thing I ever heard of.
Love was made for me and you.
But you can't have a Parent Trap without the parents themselves, and wouldn't you know it, Maureen O'Hara happens to be one of our contestants again. So will the third time be the charm with her finally getting the point? Well, let's find out with Best Parents. Yeah, I bet a lot of you are mad that I've stiffed this iconic actress the point twice already. And let me make it clear, I do think she's a good actress, I just didn't think she was the right casting choice for the spunky oppression fighter Esmeralda or the stingy imagination-hating Doris Walker. But can I finally give her the point along with Brian Keith for their performances as Mitch and Maggie? Well, this one is actually kind of interesting. At first I was going to give this one to Dennis Quaid and Natasha Richardson in the remake because I enjoyed their characters of Nick and Lizzie a lot more. They're funny, they're witty, they're loving to their daughters. If you wanted to trade your own parents in for these two, then you should be ashamed of yourself. But these two are really great. And sure, Maggie and Mitch are still loving parents and have a few funny moments, I just didn't find them quite as awesome as the ones in the remake. However, before I went ahead with denying Maureen O'Hara the point for the third time, I thought I should really consider it to make sure it was the right decision. And I'm so glad I did, because I realized that Maggie and Mitch had a supreme advantage over Lizzie and Nick. Better chemistry as a divorced couple who has to fall in love again. Yeah, as enjoyable as the parents are in the remake, there seems to be almost no conflict or bitterness between the two when they meet up again. I mean, sure, it is possible for divorced couples to get along perfectly fine, but since the premise of the movie is trying to rekindle the spark between two separated lovers, the lack of a grudge between Nick and Lizzie really takes away from the tension and drama of this premise. Plus, the whole reason why they had this custody arrangement where each parent got sole custody of one twin was supposedly so they'd never have to see each other again. But these two don't act at all like people who would do that. They seem like they'd be perfectly fine meeting up with each other every so often as part of a joint custody arrangement. With Mitch and Maggie, it seems far more believable. I mean, sure they don't hate each other's guts, but you can definitely see why these two split up and had this kind of custody arrangement.
You just go on upstairs and put on some clothes, that's all.
Don't you use that tone of voice with me. We're not married anymore, remember?
What'd you do to yourself, anyway?
Do to myself. 16 plastic surgeons, a major reconstruction job on my face, just so that I could be presentable. Oh, Mitch, I want you.
Because of this, it feels a lot more meaningful when they do finally make up and remarry in the end. But in the remake, it seems like they could have patched up just 5 minutes after being reunited, so the big wedding scene at the end isn't quite as heartwarming. It is a pretty tough call, but I think the shattered romance between these two is a little more important to the story than how fun they are. And Maureen O'Hara and Brian Keith portray one that feels more like it needs fixing, allowing me to finally give the former the point on a round. Point goes to the old.
How could you do this to me?
First you gotta rig. What do you gotta rig?
And now for the only spanner in the works of a Parent Trap, a greedy gold-digging villain after one of your parents' money that only you, the helpless kid, see for what they are. Yeah, I know this villain is more than a little cliche to media, but it's what we got. So let's take a look at Best Villainous.
In the original, our gold-digging biatch is Vicki Robinson, played by Joanna Barnes, and in the remake it's Meredith Blake, played by Elaine Hendricks. And give both actresses credit, despite playing a very cliched kind of antagonist, they both play it very well. In front of the dad, they're both dotting, kind-hearted philanthropists, but once he's out of sight, they're as narcissistic, uptight, and bitchy as they come.
First change I make is to send that two-faced little brat off to boarding school in Timbuktu.
Oof. Ice woman.
Proud of it, babe.
If you don't want to smack either of them hard in the face by the end of the movie, then you have no sense of morality whatsoever, but as much as I love to hate both of them, I'm going to go with Vicki on this one. It's kind of like the two versions of Chris Hargensen in my Carrie review. The original has a more dignified and controlling presence to her, like that popular girl who can make any guy or teacher jump off a cliff just by asking. Meredith feels more like the popular girl's sidekick. She clearly wants to be in control, but she doesn't feel as domineering. Vicki is also a little meaner. Like when she first meets her fiance's ex, she pretty much tells her to F off. Meredith is more like, go figure. Or in the original, Vicki actually hits the girls after all the pranks they play on her at the camping trip. Meredith just looks pissed. Again, both actresses are really unlikable and cruel, but Vicki feels like the slightly more controlling and evil of the two. By the way, why are there so many Vickis in media who act sweet in public but are cold-blooded monsters behind closed doors? Leave a comment if you happen to know.
Point goes to the old.
You are in way over your head. Is that clear?
First you gotta rig. What do you gotta rig?
The Parent Trap.
But you can't pull off a Parent Trap all by yourself. You need just the right support to make sure it pulls through. So let's take a look at Best Supporting Cast.
I guess we should start with the butler and the housekeeper. The ones in the remake, Martin and Chessie, have some of the best writing in the entire movie. They're funny, witty, supportive, and they make a great comic relief duo. I mean, how many English butlers do this with the rich family's kid? The original is pretty forgettable. Hell, I don't think he even had a name. The housekeeper Verbena is okay and has a little wit to her, but it doesn't even come close to Chessie's. How about the grandfather? Both are pretty good as the slightly timid but still kind and wise grandfatherly figure to the girls, but I think the 61 version stands out more on account of his awesome moment where he tells the obnoxious control freak grandmother to shut the hell up.
For once, I'm putting my foot down. Let them alone.
The grandmother is axed from the remake, so this segment sadly is too. But frankly, I didn't like her much more than the other characters did, so it's not a tremendous loss. Although I was sad to see the father's ranch hand cut from the remake as well, because he was kind of a funny character, though a little of his humor's moved over to Chessie. The gold digger's parents are good tight asses in both films, but I think I like the ones in the remake a little better. It probably helps that Joanna Barnes, the actress of Vicki in the original, plays her mother here. I'm not sure if the people at the camp really qualify as side characters, seeing how they completely disappear after the third act, but I'll be nice and count them. The other campers are a lot of fun in both films, but the ones in the 61 film are fleshed out a little more, so I guess the advantage has to be given to them. What about the camp organizers? I like both incarnations a lot, but their reactions to the girls' prank war is a lot more memorable in the remake.
You two. The isolation cabin.
So, factoring all that in, it seems like the remake really does have the better supporting cast, though only by a little.
Point goes to the new.
See, you're flying off the handle.
Love was made for me and you.
Just like our two broken lovers at the end of the film, it's all tied up. So now we've come to the big deciding point, best story. This is Story for the win.
At first glance, it might seem a little unusual that the 1998 film is considered one of the best Disney remakes ever because a lot of it feels almost as identical to the original as the twins are to each other. Sure, there's a few small differences in detail, but at least 65% of the scenes and dialogue in both movies are verbatim. Hell, this might even be on the level of the Lion King remake in similarities. But thankfully, a lot of the 35% that's different is something that really gives the remake a huge advantage, a better sense of humor. Sure, the original had some funny moments too, but it was a bit more grounded in reality, which isn't necessarily bad, but somewhat limits the comedic possibilities. The remake makes it clear it's more interested in being an entertaining movie than a believable one, so this allows it a little more leeway with its humor, especially with the camp at the beginning. Yeah, you thought the camp in the original was poorly supervised? This one has the girls betting money and skinny dipping if they lose at poker. Or how was Annie able to get all of Hallie's cabin beds up there? Even if her cabin mates helped her, they would have had to have used a crane or something. And how did nobody notice them doing it? But again, suspension of disbelief helps make scenes like these all the more hilarious. Hell, the series Camp Lazlo would have never worked if they had believable adult supervision at the camp. Even for the verbatim scene-for-scene moments, there's often a bit of witty humor inserted in, like Hallie giving Annie an ear-piercing hack job as part of their masquerade, and pretty much every scene with Martin in it. The story in the remake also features a wider range of unique locations. In the original, Sharon and her mother are British folks living in Boston, but in the remake, they actually live in London, allowing for some nice shots of one of the finest cities in the world. Or in the scene where the girls are trying to woo their parents back together, they actually get a yacht for them to recreate the night they fell in love on the cruise ship. Speaking of which, that opening scene on the cruise is just awesome. Not only does it have great visuals, great camera work, and a great song in the background, but it's really fitting to start the movie off on the original wedding of the parents. And sure, that stop motion opening with that Sherman Brothers song paraphrasing the plot of the movie in the original was nice too, but it's no match for this piece of art. I know I've been pretty one-sided on this one, but again, there are some things in the original that are vastly better, like the chemistry between the broken parents, the screen time of the villain, and just the twins singing that awesome song, Let's Get Together.
And if you stick with me, nothing could be great to say, hey, alligator.
Sure, there's a pop version that appears during the credits. Hell, I'm using it as the background music right now, but it's just not the same as the twins performing it for their parents. But on the whole, the remake really does tell the story better. There's just more laughs, more diversity, and slightly better characters. I think the last thing I want to point out is, while the original parents' chemistry is done better overall, I do like how the ones in the remake don't decide to remarry the second after they start remembering all the good times they had together like in the original. It takes them at least a day after they've parted, making for a more believable and dramatic climax. So yeah, I can definitely see why this is a rare case of a Disney remake being even better than the original.
Point goes to the new, the better flick.
That was the most infamous, the most revolting, the most disgusting display of hooliganism we have ever had.
Love was made for me and you.